Hello, everyone, and welcome to the explanation about the 40 skills needed for young people to succeed. So here are our goals for today. You're going to be going through the PDF document to determine how many assets you have. You're going to create a personal profile based on your internal and external knowledge of some of those assets that you have or don't have or you've worked towards. And you're going to investigate methods of gaining more knowledge. So how would you improve? You're going to be setting some goals. So in this first part, in part A, it says review the list of 40 developmental assets. And you're going to think about how many do you rock at and how many would you like to acquire. So if you noticed here, where did I get these numbers? I'm referring to this 40 assets resource doc. So I went through all of these assets and I counted altogether that I have 28 assets that I believe I have from that list. All right. And then I went through and I'm like, oh, well, there's 5 more I wish I had. So that's where this ideal number came from. So again, from the Developmental Assets Research Institute PDF, check it out. There's your list of 40. So figure out which ones you have and how many more you'd like to have. Part A is done. Let's move on to part B. In part B, you're going to examine your strongest, mightiest assets, 3 of them, your weakest assets, 3 of them, and then this last category, 3 assets that you've already like worked on and you've improved and they're like getting to be your strongest but not quite there yet. So this would kind of define you as a whole person. These 9 assets that I'm asking you to look at. Don't forget to post the entire asset. So for example, if number 17 from this list over here, creative activities, young person spends 3 or more hours per week in lessons or practice in music, theater, or other arts. So let's say that's an asset for you. You would include 17 and you would include the entire asset described as per the document right there. So there's your first one, and then you would include a second one, and then obviously a third one. So make sure you do this for all 3 categories. So in total, you will have 9 assets filled out in this chart. Great, part B is now done. Let's move on to part C. This is the last conclusion activity. So for this one, you're going to choose 3 achievements that you would like to establish this year. So think about SMART goals. We've talked about this in class. There's a resource here that I would like you to refer to. All right. So SMART obviously stands for something. We've gone over it. So make sure it's included in your answer. So let's say my asset that I want to work towards is my religious community. I want to make sure that I spend 1 or more hours per week at my religious institution. So here's an example of how I would type my SMART goal. I'm going to go to my temple on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. for either service or prayer, whichever you want to call it. And then after service or prayer, I'm going to spend 30 minutes chatting with members of the community. I'm just going to check the date. That means Saturday's the 19th. So I will begin this on the 19th of September and continue it for the remainder of 2020. All right, so I wonder which SMART goals this falls under. So if you remember SMART, I believe I've targeted quite a few. I'm very specific. It's definitely measurable because I've got a time slot here. Timely, I've included definitely sometimes 2020. I'm starting on the 19th, and I think that's about it. But it's up to you with how many SMART portions you include, but it should definitely be tapping into those SMART goals. So that is goal number 1. Please continue to do goal number 2 and goal number 3. Let's talk rubric. How are you being evaluated on this? All right, well, first of all, this is a thinking mark and it's leveled. So level 4 is that you use your critical and creative thinking process with a high degree of effectiveness. And here's what I'm looking for essentially for you to achieve that. So you need to make sure that in A, your totals are complete. You have how many assets you have and how many you wish you had. Part B, you need to make sure that you've reflected on those 9 assets in the 3 categories, what you rock at, what you've worked towards, and what is still a weak asset. And part C, that your goals are in line with some of those SMART principles. So make sure you're super specific in order to get your full level 4. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. Don't forget this assignment is called 40 Assets Assignment and Rubric, and the resource you need for it is called 40 Assets Resource. It's a PDF from the Research Institute. Thanks, everyone.